Hello everyone. Welcome to the Kid Ankh Ageplay podcast. How is everybody? So we did this already. We did this interview once before, but I'm not exactly sure on what took place. So yeah, I have to try to figure that out. Um, okay, everything seems to be fine. Yeah, so I'm just trying to I was trying to figure out what exactly happened. But the last time that we did this, the episode's audio disappeared. And sadly I had to re-record this, so this is the re-record. Well, let's just start off by saying yes, it has been a while. A matter of fact, I don't think you guys have seen me since 2 weeks before my birthday, so sorry. I've been quite busy with life punching me in the face repeatedly. But things are getting back to a regular stride. And which brings me to the awesomeness of today. Today I am glad to be able to do this once again with the great Doctor Rhoda. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
Uh, the way that these weeks have been, oh man, I'm glad I'm not a prize fighter, because if I was, I would probably be unconscious. Uh, so.
Well, life is that way sometimes.
Oh yeah, like it hits like Tyson and moves like Muhammad Ali. Uh, yeah. So let me allow me to do the introduction here. Welcome back to the Kid Ankh Ageplay podcast. I know I probably should have said that at the beginning, but I forgot to. I'm sorry. Today I am glad to be here with Dr. Rhoda. I would say one of the top people that is actually done research into ABDL and into it as both a lifestyle and a personality trait. So yeah, I think it's pretty awesome. Which I'm really glad to have you back, to have you on the show. I should say have you on the show, because no one heard the other one because there was no
That's
one.
right. Yes. Which is too bad, because we talked about a lot of great stuff, and I it just kind of flowed, and now I'm going, how do we redo that? And
Oh, don't worry. I have talents. I'm like Liam Neeson in that one movie. I am a man of many talents. I can truly say that it has been it's an honor to have you on the show. I think the best way to start this off would be for you to give an introduction. Please, by all means, give an introduction of yourself.
sure. For those who don't know me, my name is Dr. Rhoda Lipscomb. I have my PhD in clinical sexology. I did my doctoral dissertation on the subject of ABDL and mental health. And since then, I've really become known for this area. I would say it is now, most weeks in my practice, it's probably close to 90% of the people that I see. I do coaching with people from around the country and around the world. I've worked with people in Australia and Canada and England and France and Israel and most of the states in the United States. And and I wrote a book a couple of years ago called You're Not Broken, Dr. Rhoda's Guide to Strong Self-Worth for ABDLs. Not only kind of explaining what it is and what it's not for people who are maybe kind of new to these concepts, but also how to come to terms with it, how to understand it, how to accept themselves, as well as how to explain this to partners and sometimes even family members. And and I've spoken at a lot of the major ABDL conventions. Um, and I really love being able to work with an area that a lot of people just really don't understand. I've trained other therapists on how to work with this because none of us get any training in this, and most therapists don't even really know what it is.
Really?
Really? Yeah, most don't. Most have never even heard of it. Um, and there is no training. And unfortunately, you end up with a fair number of them who may be well intentioned, but think that, oh well, this is about your childhood trauma, and if we help heal your childhood trauma, this will go away. It's like, no, that's not really what this is about. And helping therapists understand that and wrap their head around it, especially for your therapists who are very into trauma therapy, can be rather difficult sometimes, because that is so their mindset is that, oh, this has to be related to trauma.
So my question is how often is it that like you get it that is I bet the best way to ask the question is, how often is it accosted to trauma? Like, is it like a 90% thing? Because most of the people I ever knew usually got into ABDL by wandering onto it, and then it becoming a way for them to an outlet for their stress and trauma that they have had over the years.
Well, I don't really find any true ABDLs who wander onto it and just stumble across and be like, "Oh, this is cool." They have that moment somewhere in childhood that they can't explain, where one day they just know they need to wear diapers. It feels normal for them. It feels safe. It feels secure. And it either happens in early childhood, like right before or right after potty training, or the other big spike is right before puberty. Usually the people who wander into it are more age players than ABDL, which is how I usually kind of make the differentiation. Because the age players can come across and be like, "Oh, this is cool. I really enjoy this. It helps me de-stress." But they can also walk away from it. The true ABDL people can't walk away from it. No matter how hard they try, they're not going to be able to walk away from it. And what I always tell people is that if this really was caused by trauma, with all of the childhood trauma that we know so many people have experienced in their lives, if it was really caused by trauma, the number of ABDLs you would see in the population would be dramatically larger than what we know the numbers are actually at.
Okay.
So, and I've seen people who really didn't have childhood trauma who also developed and became ABDLs, which wouldn't happen if it was caused by trauma.
That's very true.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, we had a guest on the show a couple of weeks ago, Mercy West, and he was talking about like how he had got into it due to having a partner that was into it, and he gave it a try and really enjoyed it, and it was something that he really found awesome and interesting. So yeah, so that was great. Like, so that's why I was wondering, like, how often is it accosted to trauma? Because of there being such people that were, you know, some people that are not introduced to it by trauma, or they're introduced to it by like a partner, and then they find it, they enjoy it a lot, and they use it as a distressor and as something that is helping them cope with a lot of things. So yeah, I do get that. Okay, I do get what you're coming from.
Yeah, and I think that's the people who are more the age players.
Mm-hmm.
If they kind of stumble across it, a partner introduced them to it, they're probably not what I consider true ABDLs, but they're on that spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 'cause this whole thing is a spectrum.
Okay.
You know, I always tell people, like, think of if you've met any adults, oftentimes like a couple, and their favorite place to go on vacation is Disney World, but they don't have kids. Not your typical adult.
Yeah.
Most adults go to Disney World because they're taking their kids. The adults who are going by themselves have a little bit of that sort of childlike exuberance, and they're able to tap into that. And you know, they're the same people who have a whole room dedicated to Legos or stuffed animals, or you know, things like that you don't generally see as the hobbies of typical adults.
Okay.
You know, or they're very into Disney movies. You know, they're very into Power Rangers. You know, any of those kinds of things. They're very much into it,
Mm-hmm.
and they have that kind of childlike quality to them. They wouldn't say they're part of the ABDL community,
Mm-hmm.
but yet they exhibit some of those same qualities. I'd be like, no, they're kind of on that spectrum. Like, they're not that far off from the people who identify as AB or littles, or, you know.
So I find that interesting because, like, I met someone who classifies themselves as a middle last weekend, and
Mm-hmm.
even though they classified themselves like as a middle, there was a lot of exuberance and ecstaticness, and some like very littleish traits that kicked in when I was talking to them.
Sure.
And like, I remember sending them a message recently, and then they were just like, "Oh, I'm not a little, I'm a middle," and I'm like, I'm not exactly sure if you know just yet. Like, you come off as a middle, yes, when you're introduced, but once you feel comfortable around people, I can tell that you're a little. Like, there is that regression that does happen, and that was awesome. Like, it's that exuberance that I always enjoy out of the community, because that's where my love for the community came from.
Yeah, it is one of the things that I always love about going to, when I am new people I work with, I often tell them, you know, and you need to go to one of the major you need to go to CapCon, or, you know, back when TeddyCon was there, go to TeddyCon, or, you know, some of the new ones that are coming out, and be like, and they're like, oh, I don't know, there's all these people. I'm like, and yeah, and that's the point, is you're not going to feel so isolated. You're going to meet like-minded people, and for a few days, you don't feel so different.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of funny because that's like my whole thing when I went to CapCon, not Cap, TeddyCon for the first time. I remember that I was like the only one that brought action figures with me, and a lot of the other littles were just playing with the stuff that was there, and like I ended up like going into from spot to spot, changing scenery just so that like I was progressing the story that I was doing, and I still to this day enjoy like doing stuff like that. That is why my room looks the way it does. Um, let me tell you something. This magnificent kingdom of action figures, it's here, but boy, is there a lot of them. um, and like it's like a lot of these toys and I don't know if I've ever stated this on the show. A lot of the toys that you guys see here, some of these was bought when I was a kid, some of them were bought when I was in high school, which I believe most of the Gundams are. Those were actually bought when I was in high school, because just before the Toys R Us in Brooklyn near my high school closed down, I went in there and bought all their SD Gundam toys and Gundam toys that they had, which is really funny because I didn't buy any Power Ranger stuff when I probably could have. But no, I went in there specifically for that. And this is why I'm saying, like, I completely understand exactly where you're getting with, where you were going with that, Doctor. I think that is, yeah, it is something that people need to experience, because, like, when you go to TeddyCon, like, carrying stuff like this with you is wonderful. It opens a lot of doorways to making a lot of different friendships and stuff like that. So
Right.
I definitely understand about why you said that you have to go to, like, one of the major events like that. I absolutely agree.
Yeah, even if it's only just once, to be able to experience that, I think is really important for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that brings me around to my next question. This is a question I didn't ask on the first one, and I'm now curious why I didn't. I didn't realize that I had missed the chance to ask this question. So in your opinion, what is, so you've dealt with, like, ABDLs from around the world, as you were saying before, from, like, the Middle East and stuff like that. What was it like dealing with ABDLs in, like, different countries? Because I stated in my last interview that I learned about ABDL from Germany, and, like, looking at Germany and Britain and seeing what their communities were like when I was a teenager. So, like, and it was something that I was reading up on. I wanted to know more about. And the more that I read, the more that I discovered. And, like, I've stated this before. The first three sites that I ever looked at was Diaper Punishment, Diaper Gal, and Wet Set. And that was Wet Set magazine when it was still a magazine. Yeah, it's hard to believe that it was only 20 years ago that magazine was still running.
Right.
So, like, my question to you is what was it like dealing with ABDLs from other countries? Like, what did you see? Did you notice a difference between, like, the way that they carry themselves, or the way that their behavior, or the way that their acceptance came around whenever you dealt with them?
That's an excellent question. You know, in many ways, I don't really notice a huge amount of difference. I mean, I can see how in places like Germany there probably would be a difference, just because Germany tends to be so much more open about unique sexual practices.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly the United States is, or Canada. You know, it's a lot more understanding and accepting of that kind of stuff. So I could imagine, I haven't really seen anyone from Germany, but I could imagine that the people in their ABDL world probably have a much stronger community. You know, probably, like, now the United States ABDL community is getting stronger and more well organized. But I'm guessing Germany's was probably years ago, where in the United States it really wasn't quite as organized if you go back 10, 15 years even.
Yeah, I would even say about 10 years it wasn't that organized.
Yeah.
In the freshman days of the internet, it was easy to find rooms for it, but there were like, and when I mean by rooms, I mean by chat rooms for those of you that were born I was a born later, I guess, that didn't really get the chance to see what chat rooms were all about back in the day. Uh, but yeah, it is. It's one of those things that I wanna point out is it's like it's one of those things that makes me go, huh? Because like ABDL is very different from the way it used to be, from the way it was years ago. Like like there is a more welcoming tone to it versus it being more accepted for, and I'm stating this now, like, in this is it in hindsight, where it was more accepted for ABDLs that were women more so than men. And at that time, it was not so safe of a place for people of color in that community.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, because I kind of I want to point out that, like, back in the day, for those of you that don't know, there were more whites in the community versus those people of color, versus people of color like myself, I should say. And back then, it was not the greatest of places for you to post a picture and being a person of color and into ABDL. In a lot of cases, it was you would be ridiculed, or you would be told that this is, and I am kid you not, like, ABDL had to go through its own 1950s, like its own 1950s in order to get to where it is today. Because back in the day, they used to tell people, would be like, this is better for whites than it is for people of color. I am not joking. That's a real thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can go back in time and find some of those posts. Like, yeah, it was bad. Now, you didn't get that from, like, the people from Germany and the UK and places in Europe. It was only really like that by, like, really racist people that were on the internet. But that was the early days. Now, there's more racist people, but also just as equal, tolerant people. And it created a different, it creates a different atmosphere now than it did back then.
Yeah. But I mean, even now, I think online there's still problems and these divisions within the community. Um, you have people who I hear from a lot of women ABs that they don't feel real safe and welcomed online. That unfortunately they get way too many men who immediately want to sexualize them. Guys who want to immediately send dick pics and be like, "Oh, will you diaper me?" It's like, well, they're another AB. Why are they going to want? Yeah. They don't want to be your mommy.
And that's the shitty part about it, because no joke, that we have a situation, like, I've been in those situations. I've had that happen to me, and yeah, it's that desperation, and
mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it's that yearning, that years of yearning for having a mommy dom, that really created men of that type. And it's a really shitty situation, because it shouldn't be like that. It should be welcoming to everyone. Like, no one should have to come into the community and just feel like they're instantly going to get hit on and forced upon by someone else. And I understand why a lot of the women in the community feel like that,
Mm-hmm.
but I wanted to say, believe me, the entire community is not like that. I swear to you
No.
that it's usually a few of these guys that are online, and those guys do not attend actual munches or parties, and I can guarantee you that they don't, because the community does not. The kink community has etiquette and rules. And those etiquette and rules are usually what ends up pushing these people out of the community.
Yeah, for the most part, you do see a lot of them. Eventually, they get pushed out. You know, they show themselves, and they will get pushed out. Though sometimes it does take a little time. But
So,
you see much fewer of those at the conventions than you would otherwise expect.
yeah. Yeah, because a lot of those guys usually end up being asked to leave the con, and then they are not allowed back in.
And then they're not allowed back. Yeah.
So, that brings me to another question. I want to ask you, so when in your experience, right? How often do you run into those that are trying to get rid of being an AB? Like, how many of them? Because you had mentioned before that, like, people start trying to get rid of it and saying, like, I don't want to be like this anymore. Mercy West, in my last interview, stated that they had a partner who at some point just started purging and just did away with a lot of stuff. The thing that I know from my own personal experience is that same type of thing happened with me. Like, I've met people that tried to purge and whatnot, and they gave away all of their stuff, and they're like, I don't need the community anymore, and then they just cut everybody off. Yes.
Right. And you do see that. You do see these people who will try to push it out of their lives. They just, for some reason, one day decide, nope, I have to be done with this. Sometimes I'll see it where they'll meet a new partner who they haven't told, and they're like, oh, well, if I just dedicate myself to this relationship and we get married and it'll all be fine. I can just throw all this stuff away and make it go away. And of course it doesn't work, but they can do it for a while. Like, they can do it for a while. And sometimes I will have people contact me, and we'll either have an initial session or a consult or something where we just kind of talk to see if we're a good fit to work together, and they'll be like, I have to make this go away, I have to make it go away. And I tell them, very honestly, that, well, number one, you're not going to be able to do that. Like, this isn't going to go away. No matter how hard we try, no matter what we do, we're not going to make this go away. And even if you wanted me to try to work with you to get it to go away, I'm not going to do that, because it's not really ethical for me to put somebody through something that I know, A, isn't going to work, and B, is going to leave them feeling worse about themselves when finally they realize it doesn't go away.
Mm-hmm.
But some of them will still be like, well, no, I have to find somebody who will do that. And I'll like, well, you'll probably find somebody who will tell you they can, but I'm telling you they can't. And you're going to waste a lot of time and money. And in a few years, you're still going to be right back where you started. But if that's what you want to do, that, I can't stop you, but I'm warning you, this is what's going to happen. Yeah.
Do you ever have a situation where those people don't return? I've never seen it. I'm going to be honest. I've never seen it. A lot of the people that don't return in my community usually try to turn against the community, but in actuality, they're just like, yeah, I had to come back.
Yeah, and I haven't had any come back, but I know there are people who will stay in that very negative place of self-loathing and self-hatred for years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you used to see it more often, like in the gay, lesbian, bisexual community. I mean, you still have people like that. We won't name any name, but there are a few prominent politicians who clearly are closeted, self-loathing people who are always the ones who are so anti-LGBTQ.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I think somebody needs to come out of the closet and accept themselves because you're way too focused on what other people are doing in their bedrooms.
Yeah, and that is something that always gets to me, because it's like there are people who really believe for some reason that by them imposing like their how can I put it? It's like them imposing their not it's not a belief system, because a belief system is something that you strive to because you actually do believe something is going to be different. These people are not so much that. They are more I'm trying to think of it. It's more, yeah, opportunistic, but they believe that by some way them forcing their neighbor of being like their ideal, the way that they have for themselves, then that will make them strive to be better, and that's not how it works.
And that's not how it works, no. Yeah, their own feelings are not going to go away by imposing that on others.
Not at all, because that
No,
never works.
it never works, no. But, yeah.
So that brings me to another question I wanted to ask. You had mentioned to me once before about personality traits and how ABDL is a personality trait. I would love for you to elaborate on that, because I wanted to know more on this.
Well, I mean, the more I've been around it and the more people I've talked to and studied it, it seems very clear to me that, I mean, this is clearly not something that most people on the ABDL spectrum choose for themselves.
Yeah.
Um, and and there's this commonality of, you know, remembering a point where it just sort of appeared, and they didn't know why, but they just knew that that made them feel comfortable and safe. And for the people who it's very sexualized about, especially when they hit puberty, you know, their interest in sex then ended up being connected to diapers.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very strongly. And so I do think it is, you know, I like to say it's just how people are wired, you know, because especially for people who are littles, I mean, their personality and the way they react to things is very much about that in ways they can't always easily control. You know, some people, you know, you'll hear some people talk about how they have a really hard time getting into little space. You know, they have to really work at it, or they need a partner who helps them get there. And then you have other people who just drop into it almost very easily and authentically, and it just happens throughout their days or weeks, and they don't really, they have to fight to get out of it because it's just who they are.
Now, when you say that they're fighting to get out of it, you mean like them not they're trying to go back to that more adult set mindset, and they're having a hard time reaching it? Or do you mean that like it's like in those certain cases of there are people whose little side is part of their personality and how they act on a normal basis?
Yeah, it is. Sometimes it's part of how they act on a normal basis, and you'll see they off, or that they'll drop into a little space and they're like, oh, wait, I really need to get this work done. I can't be going in this space right now. I've got to pull myself back because I have responsibilities, I have things to do. I gotta stay big, but I really don't want to stay big.
Yeah, and that usually doesn't work for them. Because I know for myself, like,
It's a battle.
yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely is. It's definitely like one of those situations that it's like, it's not easy to try to bring yourself back out of little space. Actually, that actually gives me a chance to explain a little bit about myself, actually. When I was working before, this is way before the pandemic. I used to at my regular job, like I would always talk about like how excited I was for like a new anime to come out or a new manga to come out or but one of the things that I enjoyed that everyone was so confused on why I enjoyed it so much was Kamen Rider and Power Rangers, and people were just like, wow, you really enjoy that show. I'm like, yeah, I seriously want to do a costume for it because I let my creative outlet go as much as possible, and hence why like whenever I do work on whenever I do work on a costume, I make a little space version of it. Like for instance, like recently I've been working on little space costumes alone. So things to wear to kink events and stuff like that.
Sure.
But now that brings me up to the situation with what I was just explaining. Is like I used to talk about this all the time. One day I went to the nightclub that I go to, the body shop, and there was a situation where oh boy, I never forgot this. This is for ladies and gentlemen, this is like 2021, like right like towards the end of the pandemic. I was one of those people that was like, I'll take a chance and go to this nightclub tonight because they were allowed to have people there as long as you wore masks and stuff, which was fine. When I went to this event, it was really funny because I walked in and I'm there drinking and at the bar, and then all of a sudden this woman and I walk past each other. And I look back and I go, and I'm gonna use I'm gonna use a different name for this, but I was like, Ash, and she goes, Lars, and I'm like, yeah, hi, and then she's like, hi. Now, quick thing, this is a kink club, like a kink / swingers club. She worked for HR. And I'm like, oh my. And so I walk by, I go, how are you? And she's like, I'm good. How are you? And I'm like, well. And then she says, oh crap, forgot. We didn't see each other. We just go on about our own business about as if nothing happened. I go, I don't work with you anymore. So I was like, you don't have to worry. And she's just like, wait, what? At this point in time, when this happened, I had lost my job due to the pandemic. Yeah. So she's like, what? They didn't tell me they let you go. And then we just sat there and talked for a bit. And she's like, I should have freaking known this. I was like, known what? She's like, you're an adult baby. Oh my God. It makes so much sense now. The love of comic books and Power Rangers. And I was like, I don't act little at work. And she's like, but do you? And I'm like, oh shit. Like, it never dawned on me that is like how I act. I get like super excited over some of the like silliest of things, but that's why it is a bit of it is a personality trait for myself.
Right. Yeah, and I think it is for a lot of people that it is just part of their personality, part of who they are, which is why I try and tell people, like, you're not going to be able to get rid of this. Mm-hmm. You're not supposed to.
but like, then why do you think it is that these people struggle so hard to try to get rid of something that is a part of them? Like, you would think that they would realize that at some point. It's like, it's almost like, I know some people get mad at the comparison. Guys, just pause your anger for like a moment for me to ask the question. So why is it like, and I'm not comparing the two, I am comparing the situation of coming out about it. It is, why is it that they have such a hard time, like, for lack of a better word, coming out of the closet to themselves about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the same way that decades ago, people who were gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender had a very difficult time coming out about any of that,
Mm-hmm.
because families, friends, employers weren't going to be very accepting, kind. There was, I mean, and still is in some places, a very high risk of violence. It's not always safe for people, and then those are different because your friends, maybe even your family, certainly your employer, don't need to know that you're ABDL.
Very true.
Right. Your romantic partner, sure, they probably need to know. But everybody else, no. So in that way, it is different. But it is still that fear of how people are going to react. And I still see that very much all the time with people who have not told partners, are afraid of what's going to happen, particularly if by this point, they've been married for years, they have children together. They're like, I've never told my partner. Like, well, yes, it's going to probably be more difficult to tell them now. After all these years, you have to expect they're going to feel hurt and disappointed that you didn't trust them with this earlier. But it's still going to be better if you have control of the narrative than if they find your stash of diapers and onesies and other things hidden in the attic or the basement or wherever you have them hidden. That's going to go worse.
That's true. That's very
because now you're on defense.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of these ideas have come up in their head about what this means and what this is, and it's much, much harder.
So let me ask you this: what is it that you feel like? So actually, hold on. We should pause for a moment, for a bit this will be the end of part 1, and then we'll switch to part 2. So,
Okay.
yeah, you guys stay tuned for the second part of this.